While the previous generation BT-50 used Ford's T6 Ranger platform, the new model uses the new D-Max as a base. But what's this new BT-50 like off-road? Well, we're out in the bush today to find out, and the weather isn't much chop, but it's going to be good for testing. Everything's a bit wet and a bit slippery, so we're going to be putting this BT-50 through its paces. Let's get into it. While the base model two-wheel drive variant starts from around $44,000, we've got top specification GT. This is priced from $59,990 before on-road costs, and it gets you a leather-appointed interior, electric driver adjustment, remote start, and the big 9-inch infotainment display. Although, unlike the D-Max, this top-spec BT-50 has a bare tub. There's no tub liner or cover as standard, but we have a rubber floor mat in here to stop things sliding around. The Isuzu-sourced 3-litre turbo diesel engine makes 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters, running through, in our case, a 6-speed automatic gearbox. This costs $3,000 extra, with a 6-speed manual being standard. Under the skin, Mazda hasn't changed anything mechanically from the donor vehicle. That means the four-wheel drive system is identical as well. You've got a dial here that runs through two-wheel drive. You can only use that on bitumen. Shift around to four-wheel drive on the fly or stop, put it in neutral and then go into low range. You've got a locking rear differential in this BT-50 and you've also got hill descent control. This specification BT-50 does get some nice soft touch materials on the transmission tunnel, and it also gets carpeted floor mats, but on a day like today, four-wheel driving out in the bush, it's been raining for the last couple of days, these are going to get very dirty and they're going to take a lot of cleaning, so I would personally prefer the rubber floor mats out of an Isuzu D-Max. There's a couple of other things from the Isuzu that I would prefer for four-wheel driving as well. It's just interior practicality. This BT-50 is missing storage up on the top of the dashboard here, and it's also missing cup holders under the air vents. So on the whole, I would prefer the Isuzu. Although it's worth noting that the top spec D-Max doesn't have heated seats like this BT-50. Off-road specifications are all very similar to the Isuzu. There's 240 mils of ground clearance, a 30.4 degree approach, 24.2 degree departure and 23.8 degree ramp over angle, and that's all on a 3,125 mil wheelbase. All pretty standard stuff for the segment, but side steps, which are standard from XTR upwards, do reduce sill clearance quite noticeably. Compared to the old BT-50, we've gone from a 3.2 litre 5-cylinder turbo diesel to a 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel, which now is from Isuzu. Doesn't have the same outright power figures as that previous generation motor either, but this is still great. It's flexible, it's torquey, but it's kind of relaxed at the same time. And Isuzu has done a fair amount of work in making this thing feel smooth and refined, even when working relatively hard. When it's powering up a hill or something like that, you can hear the engine working a fair bit. For this sort of driving, off-road driving, just putting along, the engine doesn't need to rev much at all, so it's mostly nice and controlled. In this 6-speed automatic gearbox, it's a torque converter, Aisin 6-speed, similar to what you get in a Toyota Hilux and practically identical to what you get in a D-Max. It's proven, it's a great performer, it makes good decisions, it's not rash, it doesn't jump around too much, but it kind of doesn't need to because this engine is so flexible. Low range gearing is generally pretty good. It's par for the course in this segment. And because it's a relatively low revving turbo diesel motor, a nice relaxed 6-speed, you can use nice control through the harder sections, and we will get to some harder bits coming up here on this track. But so far, we've got some slippery conditions. This thing's performing quite well. Like the previous generation BT-50, we've got a locking rear differential as standard fitment, but the off-road traction control does get turned off when the rear locker is engaged. In our case, the optional 18-inch wheels are wrapped in 265/60 R18 tyres. So we've got a rutted section of track up ahead of us here. This is going to be a good little test. It's wet, there's a lot of water on the track, and it's really rutted out. So I'm in low range. I'm going to put my diff lock in straight away because I reckon I'll need it. This will still be a good test for ground clearance. I'm a bit worried about the side steps on this Mazda, and also just traction, because it's going to be lifting wheels aplenty. Drop in here now. I'll have to drive around these tracks a little bit, turn off that parking sensor, that's going to be going crazy. And let's just see, nice and slow, how we go. Oh, that wheel's lifted up straight away. It's pretty slippery. I can feel the car sliding around slightly. Drop into the other side here. Oh. Clearance isn't too bad so far, and this is just driving it. Bit of side step there, scraping, but that's all right. Not too bad. You do have to sort of come at these ruts like a bit of a snake and try and work your way around the worst of them. Otherwise, you will just hit your sills pretty quickly, I think. But this is doing it pretty easy. Yeah, typical independent front suspension. There's not much articulation in the front there, but the rear does have a little bit. And if you've got a rear locker, you should at least have one rear wheel on the ground, pushing you forward most of the time. That's a challenging bit of track too, so for a stock standard car, that's not too bad. While the new BT-50 doesn't make the same big leap forward as the D-Max, it's still a solid choice as a four-wheel drive ute. Traction control isn't as good as others in the segment, but a locking rear differential is, as always, a great thing to have off-road. And while I've still got you, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to CarAdvice on YouTube for more car content. And head over to CarAdvice.com to read the full Mazda BT-50 review and the thousands of other reviews we have on the website.